Well, welcome back. We continue in our discussions about themes from the Lynx Players magazine this year, and we've been talking about Davis Love, who is on the cover of our magazine this year. And we talked last time about one of the known parts of Davis's story, that he gathered much from his father in training. But another part of that story is that Davis lost his father long before he should have. His father was killed in an airplane accident, and then Davis had another point of tragedy when a brother-in-law of his took his life, and his own life, and Davis was very much involved in that particular thing. And now Davis's mother is ailing greatly, and so this kind of common understanding that happens to all of us, that tragedy will enter our lives, sometimes very unexpected, sometimes through the course of life as we grow older and things invade our bodies and that sort of thing. And so Jeff, I want to talk a little bit today about how in the world we maintain a joy for the Lord in the midst of tragedy like that.
Well, Jeff, I think one of the first things that we have to get to is just a sense, we have to overcome what the culture thought about tragedy even during the time of Jesus. Jesus really started a revolution in thinking about tragedy. Before, there was always a sense in, well, why is this man born blind? Did he sin, or did his parents sin? I mean, who's at fault for this? And Jesus responded and said, well, nobody. The purpose for this was to actually glorify God through this process. And that really upheaved. So one of the things that we have to lay as a foundation is that this idea that once we come to God, there will be no tragedy, there will be no death, sickness, or anything, is just spiritually is a lie. It's not true. And I believe, I meet so many people over the course of the years who put a big stiff arm on God because they lost a spouse early, or they lost a child, or they lost, and it forces them in their mind into a position that if there's a God, I don't want anything to do with that God because he allowed this to happen. So they kind of relegate themselves to a life of, well, then there must not be a God, or if there is, I don't want anything to do with him. And it's kind of like what we talked about. They take sabbaticals from God for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years because they really don't fundamentally understand that God wants us. And Jeff, you've done a beautiful teaching on this occasionally when we've been in Israel together. On the very name of Israel means to wrestle with God. And in tragedy, we're forced to wrestle with God. And that's essentially Psalm 42. It says, my tears have been my food day and night, and while they say to me all day, where is your God? These things I remember, and I pour out my soul within me. In other words, there's a struggle with God. Why have you allowed this? And we recognize that. I tell you, when I look at wrestlers during the Olympics, I wrestled a little bit when I was in high school, not much, junior high actually, a little bit, and it was a little too intimate for me. But I'll tell you, if you're wrestling with somebody, you very rarely get in much closer proximity than a wrestling match, and God wants us to. So he uses this. It's just a bad misnomer to imagine that tragedy, well, not, Jesus couldn't have been more clear. It's through many tribulations that we enter the kingdom of heaven. So I think if we can eliminate that, it gives us a sense in which God is still there, and maybe we need to wrestle with him when we encounter tragedy.
You know, in a practical sense, I'm glad you went to the Psalms. I told you, I think, kind of when I was going through some of my stuff early on, and I'd just been diagnosed, and I was going to the Psalms a lot. And you told me your mother, who had a serious accident a couple of years ago, same thing, went to the Psalms. The Psalms are so honest.
Yes.
You know, this is what's going on, God, and I don't understand it, and I don't like it, but you're there.
Right. Exactly.
You know, so
it's I can tell you right now that my mom lived in the Psalms. And here's the strangest thing, and these are her words, not mine. I would never put these in somebody else's mouth. But she said, and just a little bit, she almost died in a tragic car accident, just an amazing car accident, was air vac'd from out where she was. And they were in the middle of doing a ministerial duty. They were leaving their car for an assistant pastor, and that's why she wasn't with my father. Like, how can God allow this? And she's been through 12 or 13 major reconstructive surgeries on her face, and just an unbelievably horrific series of events over many years. But she told me, she said, I would go through it all again because of the intimacy that I felt with God through the process of tragedy. And I thought, those are astonishing words. I don't know that I could say that, but she said, I would undergo it all again because it brought me so close to God, which are an amazing statement of faith. So many times it drives people away, tragedy, or other times it actually drives people to God, and God would say, please come closer to me, come to the Psalms, pour out your heart, wrestle with me, and see if I don't show up.
Wow. A lot to think about again. Sorry to keep doing this to you, but there it is. A little more to think about and maybe talk about with your group, and we'll be back again, maybe to take you in a different direction.